Ready to go?
Yes.
All right. We are here and we are on, Michelle. Welcome, everybody. Good evening, good evening, good evening. Welcome to the Speak Your Truth with Mark Ross podcast. I am your host, Mark Ross. And with me this evening is Miss Shell SilverSmith. Did I get that right?
Yes, you did. Hello, Mark.
Hi,
Thank you
how
for
are
having me.
Thank you so much, Shell. I want to talk about your book,
Oh,
Finding
great.
My Sacred, right? But before we get into that, I want us to talk about a few things that's going to lead up to your book.
Oh,
All right.
yes.
So, uh, real quick, tell the viewers about who you are and what you do before we get
Okay.
started.
Yes, I'd love to. My name's Shell SilverSmith, and I am from Salt Lake City, Utah. And I have a bachelor's in family and human development. And I'm a writer. I wrote a book. And I love sports. This is something people don't know, but I live, eat, breathe sports. I've coached a boys basketball team, and we've been undefeated. And I love football. I'm on a fantasy football team. I love basketball, and I'm Navajo, and I'm a healer. I've
Mhm.
learned some pranic and Reiki, and I also do prayers, and I'm a fan of doing sweat lodge like stuff, like being in a sauna. I believe it takes out the toxins from my body. So I've been doing that a lot, and I am a believer in you are who you hang out with. And so I'm very much a loner, yet I'm finding my tribe. I'm finding my people,
Good.
which has been a long process. And of course, I love the people that have already been in my life. But unfortunately, sometimes there are toxic people in our life that are family members that we love.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had to um, stay away from that and learn to live a new life,
Mm-hmm.
because if someone's bad for me or someone puts me in a lower frequency, it's very difficult to do what I do. So yes,
Indeed.
and I wrote a book, and like I said, I'm Navajo, and I love to just be educate the world about raising your frequency. And also I want to educate people that they can heal themselves. They really can. And that's my hope for us, is there are different modalities
Mm-hmm.
that we can learn, and learn to heal our own bodies. Maybe not, I mean, sometimes medical hospitals and doctors, they definitely are necessary and have their place, but prevention and just living a pretty clean life. I mean, to do what I do, I had someone ask me after they saw the video of a healing I did in the ER on my son. It's on TikTok and Instagram, Shell SilverSmith.
Okay.
He asked me, "How did you do that? I mean, did you just walk in and do that?" And I'm like, "No, I am so lucky that weekend, because in order to do what I do and in order to heal, I need to be a clear channel. So my body needs to be a clear channel." And
Mm.
in the way I've done that is, unfortunately, I love a beer. I don't mind alcohol, but I cannot partake in alcohol or any type of substances, and I don't.
Mm.
And even to the point of coffee, I'm so sensitive. The caffeine in coffee really gets me off. So I really have to watch what I put in my body. And
Okay.
like I said, who I'm around. And just, I have daily practices that put me in a state where I believe I'm in a higher frequency. And that's my diet,
Okay.
my mental health, who
Right.
I'm around,
Right.
and just my daily prayers and daily communication with
Stay
my
connected.
higher power or my guides.
Yeah.
Yes.
Staying connected. Good
Yes.
deal. Good deal. Good deal. But like I said, I want to talk about your book, but before we do that, I want to ask you to talk about your upbringing, and if your book is dedicated or predicated even to your upbringing, because you're Navajo and your dad is Spanish, correct?
Actually, he's Navajo too. That's
Oh,
okay.
well.
You know what? You say that, but his dad did speak Spanish. My grandfather. They lived in New Mexico, not Mexico. People get that, yeah, kind of confused.
Yeah.
Yeah, my dad is from New Mexico, and he was raised on the reservation. And
Okay.
an interesting thing about my father is his mother died when he was only, I believe, like 12. So he was raised without a mother, and it was his dad. And my grandfather, where the name Silversmith comes from, is he was a silversmith. That he was a jewelry maker, and he
Mm,
also raised cattle. And his dad was a silversmith also, and it just got condensed down through time to
okay.
be Smith.
Oh,
Yes,
okay.
but I
But
see where you're coming from.
got you. So, okay, because I thought for a minute that your dad was Spanish and your mom was Navajo, because I wanted to ask you about that, in that now it should be important for people to know that you live in Utah.
Yes, that's a good. I
you
do live in Utah.
you're in Utah, which is predominantly Mormon,
Yes, and Caucasian.
very. So so let, let me let me ask you this. Was there any conflict from a religious standpoint or even a spiritual standpoint as a Navajo Indian? Was there any conflict growing up in
That
Utah
is a good question.
as a Navajo Indian that is Catholic?
There
I
you
need
go.
I need you to
You
break
had
that
on the
down for me.
Navajo and the Catholic.
Yeah,
It's
break
so
that.
different, right?
Yeah, break that down for me.
Okay. So living in Utah, yeah, it has been. I've been in Utah since I was born. So at first, going into school, I really didn't think of myself. I just was a kid in kindergarten, but I started to notice in the first and second grade, I'm like, whoa, um, I'm the only brown girl in here.
Mm,
Really was. And, I was in a fortunate situation where my teachers, they treated me like anyone else. In fact, my first grade teacher was impressed with my reading skills. I've always had horrible math skills, but I've been a great reader. In fact, in the first grade, I read the Count of Monte Cristo, and that's supposed to be, I believe, a third or fourth grade book. And I was able to read it. I can't tell you I understood the meaning and I understood the premise of it, but I knew I understood feeling and I understood parts, and it made me want to learn to understand. So I would ask a lot of questions, and I remember reading that in Island of the Blue Dolphins, and I was so mesmerized. It's like when I took the book home, and I didn't really have family problems, but it was nice to escape into this other world. So
mhm.
I would go home and I would daydream. So getting to the point, my teacher treated me like I was a good student, and there was nothing different about that. But I noticed, like the going through the third and fourth grade, um, I wasn't invited to some of the church activities. And there were like people would say, "Oh, we're going skiing this weekend," and I'm like, and they're like, "Oh, we're going with church," and I'm like, "The church? Look, wait a second, I didn't hear about that in church." And they'd say, "Oh, we're Latter Day Saint, and so Latter Day Saints." So
Saturday Saints,
and then
right?
I asked my mom about it. They call it, back then it was just Mormon, but I know there's a preference for Latter-day Saints. So I went home and I asked my mom about it, and she's like, yes, most people here are Mormon.
Mm-hmm.
And if she's like, I don't really know anything very much about it, but they've been pretty nice to me. And there's been exclusionary stuff here and there, but like with any person, any group, there's going to be those people that really are don't want to include other people. So I've been fortunate in high school. My friends that were LDS did not push it upon me, and I was invited to some church dances. And I've been very fortunate because I have heard ugly stories where people have had stuff happen to them, like where they were taken and actually baptized right there by some people against their will and stuff. But that was few. But or where
Oh,
someone actually told my nephew, you can't play here because you are not LDS. And my nephew's like, oh. And so there have been times, but fortunately, it didn't happen to me. But I've heard the stories, and I know I've always been one to speak up. So if that did happen to me, I would speak my mind and say, hey, I'm not here for that, or hey, this isn't. I'm fortunate enough that I've seen the women in my life, like my grandmother, my mom. They've always been, they've always had a strong voice. And I know Navajos are matrilineal, meaning the women take on the roles of the head of the household and make most of the decisions. And the
oh,
men,
really?
yes, and the men kind of take a little bit of a back seat. So that was normal to see it around me with my uncles, and even my own brother kind of is more the quiet, let the woman take over. And so I've been
Oh,
fortunate in that way that I.
that that's interesting. I and thank you for sharing that because I didn't know that in Navajo culture, women were uh, the leaders of the house.
In
But
my family, yes, in both sides, yes, that is
mm,
true.
mm. So could you call the men providers and protectors if they weren't the leaders of the household?
You know what? My uncles are the most caring, and there's a side that comes out from them that is really needed and really important. Yeah, they'll chop the wood and quietly, and they'll take care of the babies and change diapers. And a lot of my uncles could sing really well, sing songs, and they were my uncle Junior. Wow, he wasn't your archetype masculine figure.
Hmm.
He sure made up for it. He was really artistic, and he was. I got loving words from my uncles that I didn't get from even my own mom or my. Yeah, I like he would say, "Oh, Shelly, this is Uncle when he'd call. I love you so much,
Mm.
and I wish you were here, baby." And I felt it, and I was like, "Oh, that's
Wow.
coming from my uncle."
Well, you know, it's kind of, and I'm sorry that I'm kind of at a loss because it seems like it works for your culture. It seems like it's working for you and your culture because for me, I'm running it. You dig what I'm saying? I, I'm I'm making sure that the bills is paid. You know, I'm out here mowing the grass and like I'm doing the heavy lifting, right? And I don't have a problem with that. And I don't have a problem with how other cultures work, how their dynamics work. That's cool if it works. Because in some other cultures, that won't work. You understand what I'm saying? And I know for people that are listening, they could probably understand where I'm coming from because I don't have a issue with that per se, but I'm just saying, like, wow, that's different. That's different because it tells me that a man is still looked at as a man, not only to provide and protect, but to be that emotional anchor as well, right? Because a lot of us, we weren't raised to be that emotional anchor for our family. We were just raised to, for lack of a better phrase, get your ass to work. You get to work and you provide, you pay these bills and you take care of these, make sure they got food in their bellies, clothes on their backs, a roof over their head. But to hear that dynamic, that's like mind blowing in a good way, because
It
like I
is
said,
very different.
it is.
And growing up, I didn't think that there was any other way. I thought, oh yeah, I saw my grandma Sue chopping wood. She's out there chopping wood. She's out there running after the cattle, running after the sheep. On
Mm,
top of it,
mm,
superwoman,
yeah,
really.
yeah.
And then my grandpa, it's not like he wasn't involved. I mean, he went to the railroad and he'd have to travel on horseback to get to his job. So he
Mm-hmm.
was away a lot. So she had 15 babies. So she was the
Mm.
main staple of the household that kept the house running.
Bless her heart.
I know.
Bless her heart. Now, I want to talk about your book, Shell. And in your bio, in the bio, you it mentions that in the beginning of your book, it starts off with you being belittled by a priest during a confession.
Yes, that's true.
Talk
The
about that.
very beginning of the book starts out where I'm in a confession booth and I have something to confess that's been eating at me. And I know in the Catholic religion it's pretty much a mortal sin. And I'm contemplating
Well,
in my
what?
mind, they call it a mortal sin.
What was the sin?
Oh, you got to read the book.
Uh,
No, just kidding. No, um, no, the sin was I had an abortion when I was 21. So that was the confession. And
okay.
I had been beating myself up
Yeah.
about this. And it was among other things that were going on, like a big hurricane of trouble that sometimes comes along to some of us. I had an addicted husband who had just married. So he was addicted to painkillers.
Right.
And I had just crippling anxiety. And I'd been in a car crash. And they told me I had moderate head trauma. So I had all these things going on. And on top of it, I was going to church every Sunday. And I was sitting there thinking, maybe these things are all happening to me because I committed a sin. And so I'm like, I'm going to come clean. I'm going to go to the confession booth and I'm going to do whatever the priest tells me to so I can get past this and maybe have a better path and some better luck and things will start going my way. But I went in the confession booth and like the book says, he slammed down on the counter with
Hmm.
a Bible
Mm-hmm.
and said, "You committed a mortal grave sin." And I ran out. I didn't know what to do. I was in shock that this
Mm-hmm.
would even happen.
Mm-hmm.
And I feared my life. I didn't know what he was going to do. So I ran out of the chapel thinking he was chasing me. And I get home and he had my phone number and I don't know how he did it, but over and over in text in capital letters it said, "You're going to hell, you're going to hell." Somehow he had
Mm.
done that and I could not believe that. And it was so surreal that a part of my brain was like, don't feel bad,
Mm-hmm.
because for someone to go out of their way to do this to you, it's actually on them.
Indeed.
And something had told me that, and I freaked out a little at first, but then as I sat there and I started to think, something crept into my mind and said, you know what? You're your worst critic right now. It's not coming from out there. It's not the priest.
Mm-hmm.
It's not your husband that's addicted to painkillers. I mean, yes, those are catalysts, but you are the one beating yourself up.
Yeah. But the from what I'm hearing, the priest did plant the seed in you
Yeah.
to 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 put yourself down, to give you that doubt, right?
Yes. Yes.
By belittling you. And he, did he even ask, what was it that you're going through that got you to this point? I mean, or did you just say, hey, this is what I'm going to do, boom? Well, you shouldn't do that and you're going to go to hell. Did he even try to counsel you about this?
Well, if you get to the end of the book, you'll realize why things went array.
Hmm.
Um, but I'll just give it away. I contacted the diocese, and it turns out he wasn't a priest. He was studying to become a priest, but he wasn't. But he was acting, so
Right.
he got booted.
Yeah.
And they
Yeah.
said, "Oh, he's not even supposed to be doing that."
Okay. Okay. Good. Good. Because from my common sense, if I hear a person that's crying out and talking about what they want to do, or if they did it, at least counsel that person, counsel their feelings, right? Talk to them where they're at. Don't just shit on them and talk down on them. It's like that doesn't even make sense. And it to me, that perverts the true essence of what it is to be a priest, because a priest is supposed to be someone that will counsel you, not just talk about the word, but to counsel you and to guide you. Uh, At least that's how I feel. I could be wrong, but that's just how I feel about it.
No, you're right. And to fast forward the middle of the book, I had a strange awakening, um, where for 3 days I felt all knowing, and on the outside, it would look like I'd gone crazy, but I had never felt more connected and more alive and more my true self than in that state. And on the second day, I had to take my son to Catholic school, and I was in that state, and it was amazing. I walk into the chapel to take him to his classroom, and the children are coming up and they're like touching me, like just touching my arm and touching me.
Mm,
And the adults in there would not look, they were like purposely not looking at my face. They were looking away from me,
mm,
and I couldn't understand it. And I took him to his classroom,
mm,
and going out, I have to pass the chapel. So I look, and it's darkened, it's windows that are darkened. And I thought, should I go in there? Because I was feeling not myself, but myself. It doesn't make sense. I was totally off, but I was totally okay.
mm,
And I'm like, I'm going to go into that chapel. And at this point, I had been asking questions in my head, and something else was answering it. I call it my higher self.
mm,
And so I was like, I want to go in that chapel. So I went into the chapel, and I stood in the very back, and it was dark. There were candles going and maybe a little bit of lighting. And I noticed there was um, a man praying and two ladies praying. And I started asking questions in my head as I stood in the back of the chapel. And I said, is religion real? And a voice said, religion is man made. And it was put forth so that there's no chaos in the world, to have a little bit of order and structure.
Mm.
And then I asked it, so are prayers real? And the voice said, anything you put your mind and your whole thoughts towards, and you have a belief in it,
Mm.
can become true.
Mm.
And
Mm.
then I said,
Okay.
I was asking it questions, and it told me that there's a frequency when we all go, whether it's to a church, a rock concert, just reading a book, that there's frequencies that come from it and that it touches our soul.
Mm.
And that frequency is what's important.
Mm-hmm.
And then as I was going out, I decided to leave. Well, no, I went towards the candle to pray at this special section. And as I went forward, the women gasped and they ran out. And I didn't know what was going on. And to this day, I've been talking to people and they're like, they probably saw you as light,
Mm.
like a halo, or they saw my light. And
Mm.
that's what scared them and they ran out.
Mm.
I mean, I would love to look if they had the DTV cameras or the CTV cameras to see what people saw. And
Mm.
it was real to me. And it was the most profound thing that has happened to me
Indeed.
since.
Indeed.
Yes.
I got a comment here from the chat. Tutu Lamar says, manifesting power. That, and I was on that same thought pattern when she made the comment here, because what you put your mind to, what you do with here, and it translates to your body, because you have to move, right? To make,
Yes.
you have to put in that work. Whatever you have in here, it's going to come in out in here in your heart. It's going to manifest. It has to come out. It has to be like there, right? But you have to do that work to get it. And when that voice told you, I mean, that's just that. You manifest it. You speak it into existence, and you go out and do the work.
Exactly.
Prayers without what's the Bible verse? Uh Basically, prayers without actions is dead, right?
Yes. Yes.
You got to do the work. You can pray all day. You can pray all day, but if you don't do the work, then those words is just words.
Exactly. And
So
I'm
yeah.
I'm coming to learn myself that um, being okay with where you're at, and the greatest thing I've learned is loving yourself and accepting yourself where you're at has made a big difference in my life right now. And you're right. I know now I need to make a plan and then act on that plan.
Mm-hmm.
Yet I can't be attached to the outcome. Because when you're attached to the outcome and it doesn't go the way you thought, we have a tendency to lose interest or give up. So
Mm-hmm.
I've learned that's one thing I think has changed my life, is not becoming attached to the outcome
Yeah,
and putting in the work, still putting in the work,
you do.
but not being attached.
You do. You got to put in that work. And another thing that I read on you, Shell, is because of the incident that you talked about here, it messed up your self-esteem, you said,
Oh, yes.
and you became agoraphobic.
Yes. That's when you can't leave the house.
Right, right. How long were you agoraphobic?
2.5 years, I didn't leave the house.
See.
It was my comfort zone. And anytime I left outside the driveway, my heart would race and I would panic.
Mm-hmm.
And for that 2.5 year period, I was trying to avoid panic attacks. And I'm glad you mentioned that, because our world has become a rat race. I mean, I was looking at traffic the other day and I'm like, wow, this is really a fast pace. And it's something I have a suggestion for listeners is self-care and finding something when
Absolutely.
you're not in there to soothe your soul, whether it be going to sauna, the gym. And I did something that I really am enjoying now. The weather's bad, the air quality is bad here, and
Really?
it's overcast. Yes, and so
Really?
I bought, and it wasn't expensive. These red lights, and it was, I think it was like only $32, which is not that bad considering how expensive these red lights can be. And it was a red light setup. And I do my red lights. So there's these red lights on me, and I listen to my favorite music in my headphones or even meditations for like 30 minutes a day. And that has helped me a lot. I know I can look forward to that little 30-minute time frame, and I know I'm re-energizing my body, and the red lights help the skin.
Hmm. Okay.
So yeah, just dabbling into something that, whether it's a hobby, I think we tend to, I know I did this, is give to our kids too much and kind of you're running your kids around, you're doing everything for your kids, especially Christmas now. Oh, I got to buy them this, I got to do this for them, and you kind of forget yourself. And if you're not nurturing your own body and not being there for yourself, it's pretty hard to be there for your partner or your kids.
Mm, mm,
So I'm learning that, finding me time.
mm-hmm.
And I mean, even if it's 10 minutes, that's great. Doing whatever you want, 10
Indeed.
minutes.
Just do it.
Yes,
Do it. Yeah.
it's been very helpful.
Yeah. And thank you for sharing that. I want to read off this this stat. And before I read off this stat, ladies and gentlemen, that's paying attention to our podcast here. If you guys have any questions that you want to ask of Miss Shell, please do so. All right. And if you didn't already, please go to my YouTube channel, the Speak Your Truth with Mark Ross podcast, and hit that subscribe button. Let's make this thing grow. Let's make it become something big. All right. So now I'm going to read this off to you. Socio-demographic analyses indicate that individuals who disapprove of abortion differ from those who approve of its availability in that they are more likely to be Roman Catholic or fundamentalist Protestant. So, with that being said, you being Catholic, but ethnic wise, you're Navajo. How is abortion looked upon in your community?
I would say any religious community, you're going to have that push of um, abortion's wrong and you're taking away a life. And I think for me, the deciding factor, I knew that my baby's dad had already told me he did not want to be a dad at that point.
Okay.
And he said, I don't want to be a father. And if you have your baby, I'm not going to be a part of its life.
Mm.
And that was heartbreaking because
Yeah.
inside, I've always wanted to be a mother
Mm.
and I've always wanted to raise a child. And at that moment, fear gripped me because I didn't know how I was going to support this child financially. And I know I didn't want to rely on my mom or other family members to support my child. And I am a product of adoption. And I was lucky that I was given to two loving Navajo parents.
Mm.
And my biological parents are also Navajo too.
Mm.
But and I am grateful. For the longest time, I struggled with, on top of everything else, being adopted, because I thought, well, am I really supposed to be with where I'm at with this family?
Mm.
And, what about my biological parents? And I read the report and on my adoption, and it said that my biological dad was only 19 at the time, and he was in the armed forces. And my biological mother was around 28 with, I believe, three other children. So in my mind, it was like a one night stand or something like that. And
Mm.
I grappled with, what if I was with them? Would my life be any better?
Mm.
And then I came to the conclusion, I have such a loving family. My aunts, uncles, and cousins are very close to me. I never really questioned it from that point on, because I felt so included, and nobody ever brought up the point of, oh, you're adopted. I've always been Shell to them,
Mm.
the sister, because in Navajo, your brothers, we call each other brother and sisters. There's no cousin. So I've always been someone's sister.
Oh.
And so it's been very, to me, I was in a ideal situation. Yeah, I'd heard horror stories of other people being adopted and being abused or being
Yeah.
left in foster care. And
You're
so I
right.
knew I didn't want my child to grow up like that. And it was early enough in the stage of when I'd gotten pregnant that I believe it was like maybe 5, 6 weeks out. So I did that within, like, I think week 5 or 4.
Mm.
And it was this instantaneous choice, because I really didn't feel like I could raise the child financially. I
Mm.
wasn't in that point, and I had dreams of going to college and finishing college. So it
Sure.
was, it would have doused my dreams, and I didn't have a supporting partner. So I did make that choice, and it wasn't an easy choice. It wasn't like, oh, this is what I'm going to do and I'm out of the woods. It
Understood.
was something I grappled, I prayed,
Mm.
I picked myself up for,
Mm-hmm.
yet I did it.
Mm-hmm.
And to this day, I maintain a woman's body is a woman's body, and she should have the choice to do what she needs to do and not have judgment put upon her by those outside of her.
Mm.
And especially if it's for medical reasons, or there's so many different reasons that a woman could decide to have an abortion. There's not just one factor, and it's usually a bunch of things. And I've always thought, I'd rather have it be legal than having to go to someone uncertified and have it done and risk your life.
Mm-hmm.
To me,
Mm-hmm.
that's not worth it, because
Mm-hmm.
I've heard of that happening,
Mm-hmm.
where someone will go to someone not certified and they end up dying.
Sure.
Is 2 deaths worth it because someone says it's wrong? I
Mm.
don't think so.
Mm. Okay. Here's a interesting question that I just thought about as you were talking. Have you forgiven yourself?
Oh, wow. Yes, I have forgiven myself, because I now know, like I said earlier, I am my biggest judge.
Mm.
I am also my biggest cheerleader.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew, I mean, who's judging you every second? Is it someone out there? Like
Mm-mm.
right now,
Mm-mm.
I doubt anyone out there is thinking about me other than me.
Right.
And so I knew, when you step outside yourself,
Mm-hmm.
it was me putting this mind chatter
Mm.
into me. And there's judgment at times. Oh, yeah, you did that. But it's not constant. I am my constant judge. And one good thing though, I can be my constant cheerleader. So I forgave myself, and it's really freeing. And just to know that I love myself more deeply than I've ever loved myself before. And it's come about, it's taken work to love this shell because I know in my heart every day with what I know, my knowledge, and with my resources, I do the best I can. And I can honestly say I do the best every day that I can.
So
And
you can't.
that's a feeling of freedom, and it's a feeling of just loving and knowing thyself.
Mm, hmm hmm Now you did from that point. You did move on and you married somebody. The, your your husband that was an addict, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, did you go on and have kids with your ex-husband?
Yes, we had one.
Okay.
Yeah, we have one. I have one son.
Okay. Good. And you're not with him anymore, I'm assuming.
We are good friends.
Okay.
No, I'm not. We are good friends, and we still do family activities together, and we're getting along. And who knows what comes from here on, but we're better friends now, and we're better apart than we are together.
Mm,
And I respect him so much.
mm,
And addicts, he, I know him being an addict, it showed me a part of addiction that I never knew. And I was clueless about addiction. I didn't know that when he was feeling off and bad, that he was withdrawing.
hmm
I always thought when he was feeling off and he was angry and not pleasant, I always thought he was on the drug. And here was the opposite.
He was
He
off
was
the
not,
drug.
he was off the drug, and when he was pleasant, he was on the drug. So, and it's taught me just addiction. I've had to watch a couple of my uncles go through alcoholism and some cousins on the reservation,
Hmm
and even off, and it's some of the most creative, loving people have been addicts,
mm,
and I just have to love them where they're at. And I really have learned to love them where they're at without judgment
mm,
and realize that that's their path, not mine.
mm, hmm
And that's been freeing too, being able to see somebody in that situation and not running in to rescue and try to hold them up because I can't. I
hmm
mean, when my husband was in the throes of addiction, that's what I was doing. I was going to cure him and I was going to help him. And in essence, I lost myself. I lost me.
Say that again.
In essence, I lost myself. I lost me by trying to save him.
Mm, mm.
And it was when I was able to come to the epiphany of, yes, I might lose him. I might lose him to this addiction.
Mm,
And it's okay because that's his path. And I know I've done all I could from my side, and it's
mm,
time to let go
hmm
and trust the process. And that was freeing.
But trust the process for you.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. How is he now?
He is doing really good. I think he's about, I'd say, 8 months sober. It's been little hiccups here and there, and it's nothing to where it gets out of hand. If
Hmm
anything, he might have a drinking binge for like the weekend or something, but it's nothing where it's like it was every day. And I would, you know, who knows where he was out in the streets downtown, or no one had heard from him in a week. Nothing like that. He's
hmm
like, I think he's come to the conclusion that he's too old for it. And if he had a drinking night, he can't recover like he used to. So I think he's giving it up. And he had some difficult times that took him to that situation too. He had a twin brother pass away, and that was hard on him.
Mm.
And that kind of threw him.
He had a twin.
Yes, and he passed away. So that was hard on him to lose his twin brother. So there are reasons why people do what they do, and like I said, letting go of judgment has been really good for me, and just acceptance. It's been freeing to be able to accept and to love people where they're at, and knowing I don't have ownership of that.
That's a message right there. That's a message for real.
Yes, really freeing.
I hear you. I hear you. When you said that, I felt that. And I hear you, because many people need to understand that there are certain people and things and episodes in our lives that it holds us back, right? It holds us back from personal growth. It holds us back from spiritual growth. And if you can determine that your growth is more important than somebody else holding you back from that growth, you gotta cut that cord.
And you got to realize, if you're so focused on someone changing or wanting someone to change,
Yeah,
they're holding you prison. You're a prisoner of them.
right.
So it's time
Like
to
brainwashing. You're brainwashed.
Yeah. So it's like, if you have an obsessive thought about someone and you can't stand them or a situation, release them. You can release them. Say, okay, that's not for me. I wouldn't do that in that situation. But I release you.
Yeah.
And I want to make my own decisions. I want to do something opposite of you, and just release it.
Right. Now, you weren't addicted to anything, correct? Or was it just your
Well, I don't know if I wrote about it in the book, but I did have an episode for about 2 years in college where I was gambling every day. I would gamble a lot. And I probably lost like $3,000, but I won like 1,000 one day, and it's something. And then I walked away from it one day after I lost to the San Antonio Spurs. I had a 1,500 bet on the Spurs, and they lost. And so I walked away, and I said, I'm never doing that again. I'm not good. And there was a good 15-year period I didn't gamble at all. And now I give myself a limit. I still like to go to Vegas. I'll still go to Wendover, but I'm like, here's $100, and I can do it. It's self-control. I'm like, I spend it, I'll win. Great. If I lose it, no more.
No problem. Yeah. It's called discipline.
Yes. More discipline than when I was in my college years, for sure.
Oh yeah. I have a question for you from the comment from the chat here. The question here is from Lorena Crawford. She asks, what made you start gambling?
Oh, wow. Good question. I was in college, and it was the rush. Someone had taken me to Wendover, Utah, because there's Wendover, Nevada. There's gambling allowed there. And they're like, why don't you put a bet on this game? And it was like a Michigan game, and they were Michigan college, and they were good back then. And so I put $50 on it, and I won. And I thought, this is easy money. And I felt a rush off of it. It was like an inner rush. And I'm like, excitement. And I'm like, oh, this was easy money. Let me do it again. So the next time, I think I did 100, and I won again. So I'm like, I thought it was going to be just like that and I'm like, bet higher, and then you get a loss. And then it becomes, for me, I got to make up that loss. I lost 200. I'm going to make that up. And then it just becomes this bad cycle. Yes, but I was putting the feeling of excitement in. That's what it gave me. So it was a mental thing.
Okay, okay, okay. I also read in your bio that you held down different occupations, and one of them that I would like for you to talk about was that you were a basketball coach.
Oh, yes. Yes, I'm a basketball coach. I coached seventh grade boys for at least 5 years. And I love watching basketball. I'm a big basketball fan. Of course, the Jazz are not doing good right now, but I mean, Cooper Flag. That's who we're tanking for Cooper Flag maybe. Um, but Danny Ainge is the CEO. I'm sure he can make it happen. No, I watched the Celtics. I think they're champions. I love the Celtics. I'll watch them, and I like. Geez, I watched Donovan with the Cleveland Cavaliers, so I like
Who?
Donovan Mitchell.
Donovan Mitchell. Yes, yes, yes,
So I
yes.
watch the Cavs games a lot. I watch the Celtics games.
Mhm.
Just it's just I think it's reaching a goal and getting to that goal because growing up, I was on the junior high and high school basketball teams, and just being able to hold the ball in your hand and be alone, be one with the basket, and it's repetition and just being able to clear my mind. That's how I used to clear my mind is just get to a hoop. And even now, I go to the gym and I'll just shoot free throws,
Okay.
and it's just a way of clearing my mind, and I love it. And just the strategy of basketball, being a coach, being able to run plays, um, just running an offense, getting your defense together, and the basics of like layups and um, picks, setting screens, and just and the camaraderie of being able to be in a group and to vibe with each other and know how to have a successful game and just to be able to read and communicate with each other. That's what I love about it.
Hmm. Okay, okay. You have any regrets, Shell,
In life,
in life up to this point in your life? Any regrets?
I can't say there were regrets, but I will say I wish I would have learned some tools early on.
Mm.
And such as I was really quiet and really shy. And I think my parents kind of fueled that because my mom was so domineering, like dominant. My dad was so docile. And my mom expected me to be obedient, like what she said, and you don't talk back. And oh, when adults are present, you don't have a voice. It's just how it was. And I I took that into college and high school to where I had a voice and I wanted to say something and I wanted to raise my hand and I had stuff to say, but I didn't feel like I had permission until I got into college. And then I had a little more freedom. And then I discovered I had a voice and I could raise my hand and answer questions and ask questions, and it was okay. To now where I feel like I can run an audience and I can educate, and I still learn from others too. So
Mm.
I really wish I would have found my voice a little earlier,
Mm.
but I think everything happens for a reason, and I feel like I'm right where I'm supposed to be at this moment. And I think there's more of an acceptance for who I am and what I've done. And I have to say this to everyone I meet. I'm like, I see you, I honor you, and I love that you're joining me on this path of life with me.
Mm. Whew. Wow. Uh, what's next for you in your journey, Shell?
What's next? I am writing another book, and this one is more about enjoying life from where you're at. And I don't know what the title is going to be, but I know it comes from when I was eating an ice cream, and I thought I had this mind guilt, this dichotomy of, oh, you're going to eat this and you're going to get fat. And then another one is, oh, it's so good. It's so good. It's so good.
Mm.
And I ultimately came to the conclusion of, I'm going to enjoy it. I'm going to enjoy the ice cream. And it's about what in life, the things that we can do and the things that we can enjoy, and just going along for the ride. I mean, yes, it's nice to plan. It's nice to have goals. It's nice to achieve. But, you know, my best times in life are just when I go with the flow and I have a family dinner. I mean, those moments, I'm learning to um, love, and I'm learning to accept slowing down and being present with my family and my friends, and just having presence and being mindful. I think that's been the best thing that's happened to me. Is even when I'm washing the dishes, being thankful for that, for those moments. Because
Mm.
when I was in the spiritual awakening, I was shown what goes into even just washing the dishes. Something told me, are you aware of how the bubbles and how many bubbles are in the water right now?
Mm.
And do you know what had to have been done in order to calibrate the bubbles, the water, and to make steam? And for that all to happen, it's actually a miracle. And so I recognize that now, even just washing the dishes it's a miracle. And I have I'm thankful for that, and it's just beautiful. Life is beautiful, and
Yeah. Yeah.
the human body and the human presence is beauty.
Mm. Okay. How can people get a hand? How can people get your book?
Oh, great. It's called Finding My Sacred Journey of the Soul.
Mm.
And I love the cover. You'll see a bird and a tree on the cover, and it's my colors and my grandmother's colors, which is the blues and the purples. And I am most proud of the Audible book. So it's on Audible through Audible. So you just go to Amazon.com, and it's called Finding My Sacred Journey of the Soul.
Mm.
And I suggest getting the Audible book because it takes you on my journey with my voice through the beginning with the priest, and it has a beautiful ending. And the ending always makes me cry. I've come to this book and I've listened to it. I'm a fan of it because I don't ever want to be back to where I was, which was pretty much in a depression, and I was agoraphobic with
Mhm.
anxiety. And I've had some losses, so I've had to go back to the book and listen. And it has a healing essence to it. And I've been told that by other people who read or listened to the book, and they're like, it has a frequency to it of healing. So I suggest it. And when I was writing it and I was in that state of awakening, I asked the question, okay, so how am I going to sell this? How am I going to market this? And the voice was clear. It said, the people who are ready for it and the people who need it, it will come to them. It will find them. So I've always had that belief. So they're like, don't worry. It will find the people it needs to find. So if you're met and you want healing, I believe Finding My Sacred Journey of the Soul is for you. And I think I mean, if you've gone through loss, if you've gone through addiction, it covers the gamut of everything of loss, addiction, and even if you're curious about my Navajo roots, it talks about my grandmother and growing up Navajo and the spirituality part of being Navajo that was learned from my dad. So if you're curious about that, and like I said, it has a beautiful ending. The ending, I didn't even know how it was going to end. And one day, the ending was there, and it's a beautiful ending. So I hope you do get the book, and I hope it's as healing for you as it was for me, because writing it was really healing.
Okay, amen to that.
Yeah, and you can follow me on Instagram, Shell SilverSmith, or TikTok. I didn't think that I would even get on TikTok, and I got on TikTok, and that's actually my biggest platform, which is crazy, but it might go down. I don't know. But yeah, follow me on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Shell SilverSmith. We have a lot of stuff. And
All right.
the website, www.shellsilversmith.com. So
All right, y'all heard her. Y'all heard her, everybody. You have one comment towards you. Lorena says, "Soar like an eagle, sis." I just want to give you that.
Thank you,
Give you that vibe.
which is thank you in Navajo. Likewise. And thank you for joining me. And thank you for being on this path with me, because I know everybody has a beautiful path. And I don't give up, stay strong, and life is beautiful. And I know we'll all come to see that. And
Okay.
we're more connected and more alike than we even think.
Do you have a Facebook page?
Yes, I do. It's Facebook, Shell SilverSmith.
Facebook
Shell SilverSmith.
/
Yes,
Shell
SilverSmith.
Smith. Okay. All right.
Yeah, it's like a fan page.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah, if you can, there is the healing I did for my son. We were in the ER, and his heart rate, he had taken an energy drink, so be cautious of that. And his heart rate was 240 beats a minute, which is way skyrocketing up there.
Oh yeah.
And I happened to be at the ER, and they were about to inject him with medication that stops the heart and resets it. And I stood up and asked the doctor if I could do some hand movements and actually a little bit of Reiki. And she said yes. And I did do that. And instantaneously, his heart rate went from 240 to 100. And the doctor verifies it. So you can see that on the Facebook and Instagram pages where the doctor, and the TikTok and YouTube, where she says, whoa, his heart rate was here. Mom touched him. His heart rate went down. So it was nice to be acknowledged in a medical setting and not just hearsay. It's medically documented that that happened, which is wonderful. And it makes me want to go and heal everybody.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome, Shell. I really appreciate you taking the time to come on here and talk with me about your book and your story. I've learned a lot. I've learned a lot in this hour, especially about your culture. Learned some new things about you, and I have nothing but great respect for you and best wishes for you and your journey, Shell. I really do. I really do mean it.
Thank you, Mark. I appreciate it. And thank you, listeners.
Yes. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, I am Mark Ross, and this has been another episode of the Speak Your Truth with Mark Ross podcast. Remember, everyone, self-care is important. So make your physical health and your mental health a priority every day first. With that being said, guys, good night. And Shell, good night to you as well.
Good night. Thank
All right.
you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.